Welcome to Loup TV. I am Gene, and I am joined by Frank and Craig, the co-founders of HSAPay. And this is part of a series of talking about some exciting startup companies that are getting traction, that are going after an opportunity that at first glance don't seem very obvious, and at second glance seem painfully obvious. And say no more than your HSA card, that there's a good chance you have one in your wallet. But before we get into the business, I want to introduce Frank and Craig and go back. They were founded in 2018. And Frank, I believe you were the original founding person of the company. Is that correct?
Gene, that's great. That's correct. And thank you for having us on. We're really excited to be able to talk to you about HSA Pay and what we've been going through for the past 3.5 years.
Love it. And so when in 2018, what was it that got you, why did the light turn on related to the opportunity?
So I've always been kind of a fintech guy at heart, just, following things that have been on TechCrunch and, Rock Health kind of popped up right around there. And so I started looking into the industry and, my dad had just got diagnosed with prostate cancer, and my wife and I just had our kid. And when you have two major healthcare issues right there coming up at the same time, you start thinking about what are our options. And my wife is a academy grad like myself, and so we both serve in the Air Force, and she's done about 25 years and still serving today. So we are covered by TRICARE, and so I was looking at
TRICARE is the
is our healthcare for military and veterans. And so,
gotcha.
Looking at the system, I was trying to figure out, is there any other way we need to look at saving? Because, seeing some of the expenses that my dad was having to deal with, and then just understanding how expensive it is to have a child, then I immediately rushed to TechCrunch and looked and said, what's going on here? And, there's very little traction in the space, and it kind of opened up my eyes, and, I started digging down the rabbit hole, and then, one thing led to another. I started looking at this thing called a high deductible healthcare plan, and trying to figure this out. And that's when it kind of came to me of like, what is this HSA thing and high deductible healthcare plan? And so that was kind of the light that kicked on for me. And from there, the business kind of started getting its legs.
And so light goes on, you realize if you want to build an enterprise, you can't do it alone. How does Craig come into the picture?
That's exactly right. I just moved back to the Seattle area, and I ended up getting in with a company called Cambia Health. They're out of Washington State, and they are the Northwest's largest healthcare provider. And I ended up having an introduction with their director of their incubator. And, she kind of walked me through some of the processes. I ended up pitching her my concept, and she wanted to bring me back to meet for their open house with some of their senior executives. And so I said, hey, let me reach out to Craig. He was my neighbor here 3 years ago. Let's see if he can help me make this thing kind of make sense and clean up our whole pitch and our mindset. And so Craig dove right in. He's like, hey, I can help you make this look way better. I can help you with the vision. And I've actually had an HSA. So let me give you a little knowledge on what I have.
So Craig, when you get the call from Frank, do you have a job at that point?
Yeah. So because Frank and I were neighbors, there's a really large military base here called Joint Base Lewis McChord. And I was doing mobile applications for the Department of Defense. It was inside of the healthcare space. And Frank thought, hey, my friend is already doing these mobile apps for sort of large populations inside of the healthcare space. And so it was, I had a bunch of other side businesses as well.
Oh, gotcha.
And so he thought, hey, he's got some the experience on some of the business side. He's currently doing mobile applications for the DoD. So he said, hey, have you heard of health savings accounts? I'm like, yeah, I have. And that sort of started, the triple tax-free version of Venmo that has a 401k attached to it. It's pretty great.
So before we get into the broad HSA, the macro piece too, a question just for related to founders and how you approach kind of making the leap. And Craig, I would guess that at first you're kind of doing both, right? You've got your consulting business, you're doing that, you're helping Frank along the way. And how did you think about that trade-off between time you're spending? Because a lot of people, everybody needs some money to keep the gears going, and that trade-off, it's a pretty scary jump to make.
Yeah, I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, and you're right. You're balancing it all. And it is as soon as you start seeing the the opportunity in front of you, and then you start delving more and more, and then just seeing, specifically in this product, there's no, inside of these health savings accounts, there's no Venmo, there's no PayPal, there's no Zelle, and it's just like, if, Gene, if you were at the forefront and there's all of these banks, this banking opportunity open, and you saw that, I saw this work in the future where I'm from, and you go back in the past and you're like, I can invent that for this entire industry. Then you're just like, oh my gosh, how can I get off of one and get into the one that I really want to be in?
And but at that point, I mean, is the jump kind of taking off of? It's a risky endeavor to start a company. I mean, do you felt like just the size of the opportunity was big enough that it made that a little more palatable?
Yeah, for sure. Your friends approach you because, you can get things done, and then one day you have a friend that says, my gosh, man, you got to look at this. And you're like, oh, okay. You just think it's like all of the other ones that you've seen with your,
I see.
Okay, I can kind of help you along. Yeah, sure. I have a marketing advertising background. Sure. I love you, man. Let me see how I can, push you along. And then you see, wow, this isn't like all of the other ones that I've had. Okay. Yeah. So it makes it a lot more palatable, like you said.
So that in tech world 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that's ancient history, that when you had to make those decisions, and here we are today. But Frank, just kind of from the highest level, how should investors think about the HSA market?
So Gene, that's a great question. It's a very complex one in that, because if you imagine that you have a high deductible healthcare plan that's been brought on since 2003. It's been growing at a rapid pace. And so you're trying to figure out, well, how come there's only $93 billion in it? And then when you read headlines that say JP Morgan's pulled out of it, Wells Fargo's has had HSA accounts and they've gotten out of it. Why are they getting out? Well, the complexity in the system is the real problem. It's because they ended up merging together the healthcare system, the banking system, and the investment side of a 401k or Roth kind of concept. And so, as you know, the majority of members in the US don't even have stocks or don't even have 401k. So they aren't even really looking at this. And then you're tying it to the complexity of paying for healthcare expenses. And so you have this group of people that with all this information that's kind of muddled in every which way. And so investors will automatically kind of want to push back. But we have looked at this and we said, this is a great opportunity because the growth trajectory is massive. It's like 16% on year that they're adding new members. Companies are getting away from the preferred provider organization, the PPO, because the HDHP, the high deductible healthcare plan, actually has a lot more savings and utility behind it. And so that's starting to drive their shift for how they cover their employees. And so I think this is where, if you look in the future, 5 years from now, this is going to be one of the predominant health systems for companies to use.
So from even a higher level, is HSA, the basic concept is that you can put money in pre-tax to pay for health benefit, to pay for health care, for your deductibles. And so you get basically, call it 30-50% more purchasing power for healthcare. And how many people, do we know how many HSA accounts that are out there?
Yes, Gene, you're correct. It's a triple tax savings 401k that's liquid capital, meaning you can use it at any time. Money going in is tax-free. Money coming out to use towards medical expenses is tax-free. And also when you retire, that money is yours, and however you want to use it, it's tax-free.
However you want to use it.
However you
medical,
want to use it.
Medical wise.
Medical, and however, after 65, you can use it however you want. So it becomes like a secondary 401k, right? So I see the light going on.
I did not know that.
In your head. So it gets even more attractive once you start doing it. So actually a lot of CPAs now are telling, and financial planners are telling people, put more money in their 401k than your IRA, because at the end, you're not going to get taxed on this, right? Or your Roth. This is going to be free money for you. For the numbers to the overall industry, it's about 32 million users now that have HSAs. And that covers about 45 to 47 million families and individual members in the US.
Got it. You said 42 million.
32 million holders, but it represents about 46 to 48 million total people when you look at, because it takes care of your family. You can use it for your wife and kids, or husband and kids. So,
and do you think that the number of those, you talked about some of the different groups entering and pulling out of the market, do you think the number of active accounts is growing?
I do. And that they've done a really good job with cleaning it up, being the HSA banks that manages those accounts, just trying to get rid of dormant accounts. And now they're trying to look at how do we add more money into these individuals, or make it more a better offer for individuals to want to use these products, right? And I think this is where we come in.
Yeah, I was going to say, like that sounds great. What's broken about that?
Well, I mean, there's a few things that are broken in that they've only limited it to the individual being able to put money in it, and also the employer. However, the regulations allow for the members to actually put money post-tax, and they also allow for the members to receive money from friends and family. And so this is where we came in with our application, where it brings the benefits of Venmo, Mint, and crowdfunding like GoFundMe, so that members are actually receiving money, and Acorns, I'm sorry, for you can do roundups, be able to put money into your overall HSA from just your daily purchases. And we've seen this Apple Pay, they're actually doing that also, where you can, put a little spare change away. And then the other thing is that with Venmo, we get the peer-to-peer side. And this is the big entitlement that we've seen a huge push in recently, where, we're processing transactions in the thousands for some of our users, where they're getting money from grandma, grandpa, or friends and family, and they're pushing it directly to their HSA, maybe for a pending expense, or maybe just to offset some of their future expenses.
Right.
Got it. So the kind of the mechanism for funding HSA is broken because it's limited to the employer and the individual person, and you can really open it up and make it so it's easier to have other people contribute to your HSA.
That's exactly right. Go ahead, Craig. Oh, I'm sorry.
Correct.
Would you say, so from a consumer standpoint, using HSAPay will allow those, kind of take some of that friction out of the funding side of it, and getting more assets in your HSA account, but they got to know about HSAPay, right? So part of what you're doing, maybe Craig, you could speak to this, is you have to build a brand, is that right? Or do you go more the partnership route, where you could have whoever the biggest HSA providers adopt them, and kind of powered by HSAPay?
Yeah. So we've also built an API as well, so we can go directly integrated in business to business for the folks that want to just look. We have an application for our bank. We service HSAs, and we just want to offer this ability for our members to ask anybody to send them money into their health savings account. So a lot like Zelle. So that was sort of our focus, is to.
I gotcha.
Bank.
So what are the biggest providers of HSA today? Who are the biggest providers?
Optum's the largest, and then we sort of followed by Health Equity and HSA Bank. And then I say that, but there's other providers that are like in the millions of accounts. So
Fidelity is the other one.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. So that makes sense, Craig. Is that the primary go-to-market is to be integrated within the existing providers?
That's one of the two. The other one is to be integrated in just from the business to business standpoint. So a business can say, hey, we want to provide this additional piece for all of our employees. So you'd have the Boeings of the world that would say, we want the ability to have our members empowered, the whole employee empowered, all of our employees empowered to save for their health savings account that we can be out of. We don't have to be in the narrative for them to save for, somebody's in a crisis situation that they need to raise funds for, heaven forbid, people that get cancer or, broken legs or, even braces. So they're empowered to save to that account. Just like today, I could ask Eugene to send me some money from Venmo to help out. My daughter getting braces. It's the same concept, and there's no rails. There hasn't been any rails since this was invented.
Got it. But on the people contributing in, they're doing it on post-tax, obviously. But right. But when you get it in to your HSA, you're not taxed on that. That's not a taxable event for the person who's the recipient, correct?
That's
That's
correct.
correct. And really, the use case is the traction has been seen already with Venmo or PayPal or the rest of them that do peer-to-peer payments. You can see the traction with that already. So if you just did the one switch, if you just switch from from now the taxed PayPal, the taxed Venmo to a completely tax-free system of HSA Pay, then you can save and have your health savings account fully funded every year. If you made that one switch, you can do it.
Craig, I mentioned earlier about building the brand. It sounds like that's a secondary approach. It's really about integrating within existing platforms. Is that, or do you want to do them both?
Yeah, the easiest one is that we can sell our API on the side, and then we can continue to focus on the primary business as a driver. So that's sort of the two strategies there. Yes, certainly the API side, that's already sort of structurally sound. We have a number of banking partners as well that have already signed up in order to integrate our API in straight away. And these are the higher networking facilities. Just meaning that they already have a few hundred banks that they already service, and they want to integrate us into their application in order to have banks just literally just tack it on to their mobile app that they already service. So
got it. Makes a ton of sense. Frank, bring us home here as you kind of think about what you're doing. Let's fast forward 5 years from now. And where do you think the company's going to be in 5 years, and how is it going to is it going to be a brand, or, as Craig is saying, more integrated? Is it going to be a feature that everybody recognizes? How do you see that play out?
Yeah, I see us actually evolving into a brand after we've gotten our traction with our B2B play within the marketplaces that Craig mentioned, the banking side of it. I think we stand alone just with our technology, going through the patent process and being able to forecast and support individuals outside of the business structure. And that's, I think, one of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about is the fact that, there are individuals who fall in between the cracks that aren't always serviced because of how complex the HSA is. And an individual can actually have it as a self-employed individual's account or SEPA kind of setup. So you actually have a whole number set of people. And as we've seen with
how do you do it today if you're self-employed and you want to do an HSA?
Yeah, so that's a great point. So you can actually go out to the Affordable Care Act. And I'm laughing or Craig's laughing because he did this a few months back, and he said it was the most stressful process that you could ever go through. Speaking
good for you.
Yeah, he's like speaking to the actual provider, the Affordable Care Act. They didn't even know that HSAs came with high deductible healthcare plans. So I mean, it's such a hodgepodge of information and siloed all over the place. And so we see that, as you can look at the economy right now, saying that a lot of individuals are now leaving work and they're working from home, or they're, creating their own businesses. And so we see that actually that those people might be our primary customer in the next 5 years. So I think that's where we kind of evolve to the brand portion, as we've staked our claim within some of the major banks, and then they can see HSAPay like, oh yeah, you guys are servicing everybody.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And so that idea of kind of being the center of truth, the brand of truth around anything HSA related, kind of the Switzerland of that, is that the right way to think about 5 years from now?
Yeah, I think you nailed it.
Awesome.
You could also say kind of Zelle did a good job of that, where it's integration into lots of different banks, and it's also integrated into lots of individuals. So they kind of did that hybrid model, which is what, Gene, you were talking about. So it's kind of what we're seeing, is that many banks use the API, and then they also have this brand that you can download, this mobile app, in order for you to use.
Well, I saved a confession for the end here. I have not properly funded my HSA account since really we started Loup 5 years ago. It just kind of has fallen off my radar. I still have it from back in the days when I worked at Piper and in the investment banking world. And so I'm going to resharpen my HSA account and wish there was a source of truth like HSA. I'm glad you're out there, but I wish it was fully built right now and make my next 12 hours of my life just a little bit easier. But you are doing that. In fact, you're making my life easier, and both Frank and Craig, on behalf of what you're building at HSAPay. Love founders, love the spirit, and I love taking an opportunity that a lot of people don't see and really blowing it out here. So I love to keep in touch. Thank you for the time today on behalf of those two and myself. Bye for now.